this is my Pac-Man row. I got a regular Pac-Man. I got a Pac-Man Plus. I got a bunch of monitors down here for the customers.
Wow.
I got a soup. Is everybody seeing okay?
Yeah, great.
I got a Super Pac-Man. I got a Donkey Kong Jr.
Holy cow. How many machines do you have?
Oh, I'm not done yet.
Oh my God.
I got a Zaxxon. First attempt at a three-dimensional game.
That was made around
I
the
got
corner
this.
for me.
This is a. Can you guys see? I can't. It's a Rampage. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Oh, Rampage! Wow.
Yeah, there it is. Rampage, three-player game.
They made one of the worst movies ever out of that.
It was horrible, but these Monroe joysticks on here, they go for about $80 to $100 a piece. They are very sought after. I got a full-size Miss Pac-Man right there. I got a Defender. Still running all the original hardware on it. Barely. Very hard to keep this game working. All the ribbon cables and separate boards.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's
RAM failure or just fragile ribbon cables?
Bad ribbon cables. The RAMs always burn up. The what is it? I think it's the 4116 RAMs that are always fail.
Where do you get 4116 RAMs these days?
There's a RAM replacement you can get now that only runs 5 volts. You make it a modification, so it just pushes 5 volts to the RAM.
That makes sense.
And it'll run fine, or just on 5 volts for the RAM. I can't remember the RAM number, but that's the next upgrade.
Hey, if it ain't
broke,
everything
else
fix
is
it. Yeah, good.
Yeah, right. But it took me quite a while to get this collection, and I'm not really a trader. These are the games I've wanted, and I usually keep them. Every time somebody comes to my garage, they're like, "Hey, you want to sell that?" And I'm like, "No, not really." But I'm like, money talks. If you give me the right offer, I'll take it. But most people don't.
Where are you located?
I'm down in Florida. I'm about 40 minutes north of Tampa. The town called Spring Hill. What did you say?
You got most of your games, you found them local?
Yep. Most of the games I got, were probably about 8 years to 10 years ago. And things were a lot different back then. They weren't the same value as they are now. They have spiked in value in the last
unbelievable
couple of years. Yep.
I had a request from my buddy that runs the National Video Game Museum of the Netherlands. There's a guy named Hassan. He's a super nice guy if you ever have a chance to chat with him. I said to him, well, I'm in the USA. He had mostly like Japanese imports. I said, I'm in the USA. Why don't I, get a container of games and we'll ship them over? And he went, yeah, great. Try it, Randy. So I contacted all my buddies that I know from the industry that are operators, that work in the business. And I got a big list of games and I sent to him, but the prices were so high, he couldn't touch them. The amount, $1,700, $1,800 for like a 40-year-old video game. I mean, they were less than that when they were new. Crazy. You guys are crazy.
If you remember a game called Environmental Discs of Tron.
Oh, yeah. The sit-down Environmental Discs of Tron, yeah.
Yes. Those things go for $10,000 now if they're restored. It's crazy.
Oh, my God.
Yes. People will buy that. A junker that's unrestored will go for about $3,000. It's a highly sought-after game in the collector community. Same thing with Paperboy. I had a Paperboy I sold a few years ago. I picked it up at an auction for $10, and a couple years later I sold it for $600. And now today the control panel goes for about $600. It's absolutely insane.
Okay. Well,
I'm sorry I sold it.
I'm sorry you picked up such an expensive hobby, all of you guys, because
it wasn't expensive when I started it.
Yeah, but it sure is now. Oh my goodness. Hey Kurt, how are you, man? Nice to see you. It's having issues. Your audio's not coming through, Kurt, if you're saying anything. You know, I really wonder how this recording's going to come out, because what I'm looking at now is a screen full of your little videos. I don't know what it's going to actually record. This should be quite interesting. I think I totally forgot to start the recording when this thing started, so I'm afraid that we're not going to have much of a recording.
Here's a question for you, Randy.
Yeah.
When you buy ICs, do you have a reputable place you buy them from? Do you ever come across fakes? Because I just had a chassis come across fake ICs.
Oh yeah, you talked about this previously. No, I haven't found that specifically. Typically, when I'm looking for parts, I get them from reputable dealers. Typically, however, that having been said, I was recently doing some work in. Take this off. I was recently doing some work in Fort Worth, Texas, for a company, and working on some old power supplies, and I needed an IC for it that I just couldn't find anywhere. No one had it. Not Mauser, not DigiKey, not Jameco, not Arrow, not Avnet, not anybody in any of the reputable companies had this thing, and I ended up getting it at a very high price from someone on eBay, someone from Bratislava or something. I don't know where he was from, but I got it and it worked. And when you're working on a $350 power supply, if you can get a chip for $20 and it works, it's worth doing. But that's usually not so true for amusement games. This was a slot machine power supply, and they're really expensive, super stupidly complicated power supplies. So it's nothing we were working on typically. So
the reason I'm asking is I had a customer send me a K7000 I was working on today, and the problem was it had a dim screen, and I had it on my testing tube, and it was dim. The heaters weren't heating that great. So first thing I did was I tested the B plus, and on a 25-inch 7000, it should be 130 volts.
130, yeah.
So he said he replaced the voltage regulator. It just one says 130 on it. When I checked the B plus, it was only registering 110 volts. So I took one of my verified good ones and I plugged it in there. Boom, 130 volts. Picture looks great now.
Oh,
so
man.
This one's either fake or defective, but I'm betting it's fake because it looks pretty new.
Well, this is an interesting point, and I'll just take a second to talk about it. This is just my opinion. Paul, we're getting some kind of weirdness from you. I think, can you mute yourself for a second? There you go. Thank you. Everybody hear me okay? Yep. Okay. Cool. Okay. So, as a technician, when I buy a new part and stick it in, I'm pretty much thinking it's good, and I move on with my troubleshooting, don't I? And same thing that everybody does. So it's very disconcerting when you get a bad new part, because until you've come full circle and tested everything else, and you come back and you go, Jesus, got to be that frickin' thing, and you replace it again. And in some cases, and we talked about this previously with the vertical output chips, in some cases, I've replaced a vertical output chip a couple of times, and after I replaced it the second time, it worked. And I know it wasn't my soldering. It's definitely a bad IC. So it's just horrible to think that you could replace a part and have that still be your problem with the same symptom. And Paul, I don't have an answer for that whatsoever, except to warn everybody that as technicians, in your mind, you have to keep these weird possibilities open. And you're looking for ways to eliminate those possibilities. If 100% sure, in other words, I could test a part maybe with my meter and say, I'm 90% sure that part's good. Or I can unsolder the part from a working thing and swap them, and now I know for 100% it's definitely good. And I do that a lot, and it's something we kind of refer to as swaptronics in the slot machine business, Swaptronics. But I do that a lot because it puts your mind at ease. You know 100% it ain't that. Whatever it is, it's something else, and you can stop thinking about that. But just buying a new part and sticking it in doesn't give you that same assurance, does it? Not really. I mean, just based on what Paul just said. So hello again, Kurt.
Well, when I tested this part, it doesn't even test the same as a good part. You have a chunk drop on a good part on like leg 1 and 2, and then on leg 1 and 2, the one that was defective, it gave me no reading whatsoever. It gave me nothing. So
okay, let me illustrate what you're talking about there to everybody. Stand by. Stand by. Stand by 1 second. Here's what he's talking about here. And this is a really cool trick that I use all the time. I mean, I use it constantly, and it's a power off trick that you can do to find bad parts sometimes. So you have this part, and you don't even know what it is. You have no idea how it works or anything like that. You've got some kind of a part. In this case, it happens to be like a voltage regulator. Let's say it's a STR30130, which is the one we're really talking about. And I guess I could make it actually better, like that. So you have a bunch of pins here. And can you mute your Paul? Somebody's making a lot of noise there. Thank you. You have a lot of pins here, and you have no idea how this thing works, let's say, but you want to test it to see if it's good or bad. Here's kind of a trick that you can do. You must have a meter that has a diode test setting on it. That's super important. You have to have a meter that has a diode test setting on it. On some of the cheap meters, this is the same setting as the 2K ohm setting. On some meters, it's a dedicated diode test, but you really have to have that. And you have 2 meter leads. You have a black one and a red one. Let me get a red pen here. Stand by. You've got a black lead and a red lead. Black lead negative, red lead positive, right? So there's a little trick that you can do, and the trick is to put 1 meter lead on one of the pins. It actually kind of doesn't matter. You're really kind of looking for the ground pin, but it doesn't kind of matter. You put the black meter lead on one of the pins. Let's just call it this one. So it's totally random. You don't know anything about this pin or anything. And one at a time, you use the red meter probe to probe each of the pins, kind of noting what kind of a reading you get, none of which should be shorted. There's no reason that they would have 2 pins that are shorted together. Why would they do that? If the 2 pins are shorted together, they would just put 1 pin, right? So they're never supposed to be shorted together. And if you have a good unit that you can compare it to, then you can test this. In other words, if I have a unit just like this out of circuit, and I test it in the same way, I should be the same readings, see the same readings. You are not trying to interpret those readings. Am I clear on that? You're just looking to see what they are and see if they're the same as in a good one. Now, there's a couple of things that you can do to make this test work much better. One of which is that if you can look up the data sheet, DATA SHEET, the data sheet for this thing. If I were to just simply Google the part number, STR30130, followed by the word data sheet, DATA SHEET, it would tell me which pin is ground and which is the input and so on. And I don't know these by heart. So, I mean, 1 pin is the input, 1 pin is ground. That's probably actually, this one is probably ground. And other pins do other things that you don't care about. You're not trying to figure out what it does. You're just trying to test the darn thing. And here's the weird thing about this trick that works. It's a trick. If you put the red meter lead on ground, typically you get much better readings. If you put the red meter probe on the ground pin, you will see what we call the forward junction drops on lots of the whatever's inside this thing, which you don't really care about. So if I can figure out which pin is ground, I typically, well, I do it both ways, but I typically put the red meter lead on the ground, and then one at a time, I probe each of the other pins and look at the readings. And if I don't have a good one that I can compare it to, I just use my brain and I say to myself, well, golly gee whiz, this one's 10,000 ohms, and this one's 5,000 ohms, and this one's 0 because it's ground, and this one's only 100 ohms. Well, ain't nothing supposed to be 100 ohms to ground. And one of the ways that I taught myself this is that I spent a bunch of time probing known good things. When you're looking at something for the first time and it's broke, you don't really have a good handle on what's going on. So I spend a lot of time, Paul, I know you do this too, in comparison testing, and John, I'm guessing you do too, testing good things. Well, how is this thing supposed to test? And when I come up with something that confuses me, like, that isn't what I was expecting, but it's normal, so why is this? Then you do the research and you learn how this stuff works. Does that make sense to everybody? Are you okay on that?
Yep.
But grounding the red lead is a trick that really works pretty well. And you can use this on anything. It doesn't hurt to try it. The power is turned off, right? You don't have any power on, so it's real safe, and you don't have to worry about getting a shock. You don't have to worry about shorting anything or anything like that. It's there. Hey. Anyway, so that's a power off test that anybody can do. That's super easy and very useful. I have found many bad things that way. Many. I mean, I guess the philosophy is something in there is bad. And typically it's like a semiconductor because it's an integrated circuit, and that's pretty much what's inside it. And when a semiconductor fails, its resistance changes, and we can just see the difference. That's all we're looking for, is a difference. We don't care to interpret it. We just want to see what it is. Any other questions?
Of course. I got a million questions for you,
Oh,
Rand.
gosh, Paul. Okay.
Next question.
Yeah.
When I'm
wait, let me stop you one
working
second,
on
Paul.
a tube.
Anybody else need to jump in or want to jump in? I know people are shy about this. Twan, Robert, Dustin, anybody?
Randy?
I'm just going to hold you off for 1 second, Paul.
No problem.
Randy, it's Wes.
Yeah, Wes.
Stupid question. It's been a while, but apparently, you're going to be replacing parts, transistors, diodes, whatever, occasionally. Do they even still make the lead-based solder anymore, or has everybody gone strictly to the
no, they
silver?
still make plenty of 60/40 solder, and that's what we use, of course. You definitely don't want to use lead-free solder. There's no reason for that.
Horrible.
It's I don't know. Everything is made out of it these days, but as repair technicians, it's much better to use lead.
Okay, just wondering.
Yeah. That's funny. Anybody else have a comment? Juan, you cool? Robert, you cool? Dustin, your video's off, but I'm guessing you're still around.
I'm good.
Okay, cool. No, we can call it quits then if you're done. I don't have any agenda, specific. Oh, I do have one though. Actually, I'm getting in okay, let me back up for a second. I'm getting in sort of a mix-up with some dude. I actually blocked him on Facebook, and we were talking about discharging CRTs. And I don't know what his name is. I don't really care. But he was going on. I made a comment about not having to discharge the CRT, and he went off on me for some weird reason. So I just want to reiterate something about discharging the CRT or not. But I did this previously, so this is not a new thing for me. But I just want to mention this. As long as we have a few minutes here. Game collectors are real worried about what they can touch and what they can't touch on the monitor. It freaks people out. It freaks them out like considerably. It really does. And And certainly you don't want to be touching much with the power on. You really don't want to touch much with the power on. There's plenty of things you can touch with the power on. I touch stuff all the time. There's stuff in the low voltage 12 volt section. You can touch all that stuff with the power on. I don't know why you'd want to, except maybe to test a part to see if it was hot, but not really. But the main deal is the CRT itself, which, as you know, some CRTs remain charged even after the monitor is turned off. The K7000 is not like that. I mean, any monitor made after 1990 is self-discharging, but the early monitors may or may not be, and you may not know if it's self-discharging or not. So you're worried about it naturally. But here's the deal. Inside the high voltage unit itself, and I went over this previously, there are some high voltage diodes, and they're facing that direction. They take the output of the transformer and rectify it and turn it into DC. Even if the picture tube has 25,000 volts DC stored in it when it's turned off, which it might, there's no way for that electric current to get out of the CRT and past that diode to get you to zap you in any way, shape, or form. So it's entirely possible, I guess, and I do it all the time, and I don't have a monitor here, but when I'm working on a monitor on my bench, if it's not working, I turn it on, I see a symptom. So I know the picture tube is charged now. I turn it off. I can still tilt the chassis up and solder and unsolder and test parts. And even if the CRT is still fully charged, there's no way that charge can get out and get me. Do you want to discharge it for safety's sake? I suppose you do. And I'm not saying that that's bad to do, but it's not necessary if you're careful. If you're not messing with the second anode, there's no way for the charge in the CRT to get you. That's my comment. And I made that comment, and this guy said, "Hey, like get a grip, man. We're not talking about pulling out the whole monitor. We're talking about working on the chassis." And I wrote back to him, and he gave me some shit about something. So this is my problem when I enter, and it's my personal problem when I enter your world. I come across crazy people that bug me, I guess. They just bug me, and I guess I shouldn't let them bug me, but they do. You guys don't. You guys are great. It's just one.
Thank you.
Every now and then, I just get a wacky guy that is just crazy. If you look at Facebook and look at the group, you'll see the thread. You'll see it. All right. Well, if nobody has any more questions, we'll make us a fast one. And okay.
One more question for you, Randy.
Yes. Okay, Paul. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
As I previously told you in other episodes, I do a lot of tube swapping. I've come up with this. I found this term called dot pitch. Are you familiar with that term?
Dot pitch, sure.
Can you explain exactly what dot pitch is?
Oh, sure. Let me get my colored pens out here. Hang on a second. I need a red. I need a green and a blue. Stand by. 1 sec. Stand by. That's a fun one. Red. Okay. RGB. Yeah. Stand by.
Okay.
Go to the board. Let's go to the magic board. All right. And this is actually a pretty important consideration if you're working with medium res monitors and you want to change the CRT. Okay. So what Paul just mentioned is something known as dot pitch. A pitch is something that's the distance between two things is called the pitch. For example, if we were talking about a screw, if you were looking at a screw, the helical screw, the distance between the grooves is the pitch. So it's the distance between two things that's the definition of what a pitch is. Well, the way monitors used to be manufactured, the way the CRTs used to be manufactured, is with phosphor dots. I'll make them nice and big here. So there were what we called a triad of phosphor dots, called a triad, TRIAD, a triad. Tri meaning three, of course, right? So there are three of these phosphor dots, and they're the three primary colors of light. And one is red, and one is green, and one is blue, the three primary colors, as you know. Oops, hang on, that blue pen is bad. Hang on, stand by. Stand by. Oh my. Blue pen, blue pen, blue pen. No, this is cyan, but let's see. Blue. All right, that looks blue to you. All right, that's good. All right. So
That's good.
oopsie, oopsie, whoopsie. So there are three colors, red, green, and blue, and these go across the entire face of the CRT. So next to it here, there's another one. Just give me 1 second to draw this. Red, you know, I don't know exactly how they set them up here. Red, green, blue, I don't know. They may be different, but my point is this. Well, what the dot pitch is the distance between two of the same color. That's what the dot pitch is. And naturally, the smaller that number is, the higher the resolution of the CRT. The smaller the dot pitch, the closer they are together, the better the image looks. But we don't do it this way anymore. The phosphors are now laid down in stripes. They still kind of refer to it as the dot pitch. But if you look at with a magnifying glass at any of your CRTs, in general, except for the very oldest ones, you'll see that there's a stripe of red, a stripe of green, a stripe of blue, and then it repeats, red, green, blue. So here's another stripe of red. Just give me 1 second to draw this. Another stripe of green, another stripe of blue, right? So the dot pitch is now it's not really a dot anymore, but again, it's the distance between those two things. The two reds, two greens, two blues is called the dot pitch. So, and I think it's in millimeters, I think, 0.2 mil, I can't even remember. It's been so long since I thought about it. But the finer the dot pitch, the better the quality of the image is. And so this was really super important for the medium res monitors, because you could have two picture tubes that are functionally the same. You could swap the tube and plug it right in and it would work, but it wouldn't look as good because the dot pitch is too far apart. And there's another, just to mention it in the same kind of vein, talking about phosphor, is on XY monitor. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I unplugged something. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
In the XY monitors, the phosphor has to have a higher persistence, as it's called, where the phosphor continues to glow even after the beam is moved off of it. So same kind of a deal with an XY monitor. You could stick like a regular CRT on it and it'll function, but it'll look like the picture's flashing all the time because the phosphor doesn't retain its glowingness, its glow as long. Does that make sense? Dot pitch. Phosphor pitch, dot pitch. Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Randy?
Yes.
It's Wes. One more dopey
Hey.
question for you.
Yeah.
Of course, I know this is geared towards the old video game, whatever. And of course, you know me, I'm more from the casino side.
Yeah, you are.
And I can't remember, it's been a long time since I've seen a CRT in a slot, but when I was working for IGT, occasionally we would get a call of, hey, this is so-and-so with Gilligan's, and my boss wants me to pull these old IGTs 8086s out of storage and put them into use, but I know nothing about, the CRT monitors that they still have them in there. Was few and far between, but I mean, when was the last time you even saw a CRT slot?
Oh, they're all pulled off the slot floors. There's
Yeah.
no more in the slot floors, and I'm really glad for that because honestly, they were mostly Ceronics monitors, and I'm not very good at fixing Ceronics monitors. They're a different animal, and I won't even get into why. And all the amusement guys, you don't care. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain there, Wes.
Yeah. Okay, well that's kind of what I figured. I just wanted to double check because, like I said, even when I was at IGT, they were very few and far between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, and I'm happy for it. To be honest with you, as much as I love CRTs as a repair technician, they're big and fat and dirty and heavy and dirty.
Trust me, I know. My sister-in-law until about 2 years ago still had a 25-inch CRT TV. And then it went bad. Do you remember how much a 25-inch CRT TV weighs? It wasn't like
That was nothing compared to the 32 inches and the bigger ones that they got. In the end, the biggest Sony Trinitrons, it was a 2-man job to move them because they weighed 250 pounds. So.
Wow.
All right, well, we're going to call it quits then for the day. And thank you very much for coming, everybody. John and Paul, I really appreciate you being here very, very much. Juan, too, of course. But I really appreciate you being here. I'm not sure if I've taught you anything, but it's lovely having you here and great feedback and stuff. And so
I love bouncing questions off you, Randy, because there's really not too many of us bounce questions off of and talk to anymore.
Yeah. I'm fine, and Dustin, sure nice to meet you, brother.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Looks
I'm
like you're
heading
ready to go to work. Yeah, Citgo.
Yeah,
What do you do at Citgo?
I'm an operator at the refinery. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Big
Well,
stuff.
we'll talk about fractionating towers then in the future because
all right.
I think that distillation is fascinating.
I got about a half dozen of them in just my unit. So.
Oh, must stink like hell. All right. Well, good luck, man. Stay safe.
Okay.
Stay safe, everybody.
Randy, one last thing. If the other guys can hear me.
Yeah.
This man has helped me so much when I first started learning and teaching slot repair. I could not have done it without him. I appreciate it very much. And
thanks, Wes. Appreciate it very much. All right. See you later, Dustin. See you later, you
Randy,
guys.
I got your TV years ago.
Guys.
All right, bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Randy.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you
Thanks,
later.
Randy.
Bye-bye. Sure. Bye-bye.